is Vince Stark, and this is my wife Julie. And we've known each other for 21 years and have been married for 17.
And we have two kids, Tommy and John.
Thomas is a sophomore at Moody High School in the Health and Science Academy, and John is a paramedic and a fireman for the Corpus Christi Fire Department. I would say that when I first got married, I thought my role as a husband was to be the provider, to make sure that our family had the things that we needed to live the lifestyle that we desired.
And for me, like most little girls, I grew up on fairy tales, and I thought once I met my husband that we were going to ride off into the sunset and we'd live happily ever after. The end.
Through some formation classes like RCIA and men's retreat and the women's, not the women's, I didn't go on the women's retreat, but the marriage retreat and the men's retreat, I learned that my role as a husband was to be the spiritual leader of the family, and that my ultimate goal was to make sure that my wife and my children made it to heaven.
And for me, also going through marriage retreats and other formation classes at our parish, I learned that marriage was so much more, that it was a covenant, that it was a sacrament, that it means so much more than just that fairy tale that I had in my mind.
St. Paul tells us that we are to love our wives as Jesus loved the church. And we know that Jesus ultimately gave his life for the church and for our salvation. And it also says that a wife is a gift from God.
And this sacrificial love that Jesus is the prime example of is what we try to live out in our marriage. I know that Vince has always been an image of that. He sacrifices things that he might like for things that he knows are better for our family. And I think that's one of the things that I love most about him is that he does put us before everything else. I hope that I do the same thing, that I can honestly say that I think about my husband and my children in that same sacrificial way.
I would say that you need to sit down and open up to each other, have a real, true, deep, open dialogue with one another to discuss what your goals are, what your values are, how many children you want to have, what part of the country you want to live in, what type of work you have, the lifestyle that you wish to have. Through that process, you're really going to see if you're on the same page. It may prove to be that you're not, and that your marriage wasn't going to work, or that you're going to have to make some adjustments to make it work. But hopefully you find out that you are in sync with one another, and that you have the same goals and the same desires.
And if I had to give some advice, it would be to always take time for each other. I know sometimes that sounds trite, and you've heard that before, but it truly is. It is something you need to strive for, because you are in a covenant relationship with your spouse, and not with your children. Because once they come, you have to remember that the relationship is with your husband, so that you can be good parents to your children.
And speaking of having children, I know this question was about someone who wants to get engaged, but eventually maybe possibly get married. Your children have to know that you and your wife are on the same page, that when dad says something, it's really not dad saying something, it's both mom and dad saying something, and that needs to apply for every situation that you come up with, and you need to invite God to be the center of your relationship. When we first started out, we would make decisions based on what we thought was best, and sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. And we now, whenever a decision comes up in our life, we sit down, we discuss it, we pray about it, and then after we go through that process, we make a decision, and it has made our life and our marriage much more full and complete.